So, good morning. My name is Nicolas Lepage. I worked at the Embassy of Canada in Warsaw. I've been there for 2 years, enjoying Poland. Before coming here to Poland, I was in India, where we have seen a lot of gaming companies coming to Canada. And recently we have seen also lots of interest from the Polish market. Companies like Techland that has established presence in Canada. So in that context, we've been attending for the last few years Digital Dragon. And this year, we are one of the silver sponsor. And today, we'll try in the next, I would say, 45 minutes to talk to you a little bit about Canada. We can talk forever about Canada and that Canada is back in 2016, but we'll try to keep it focused on why we think Canada is a great place, a great partner. Let me go to that. So we'll address that presentation in two big segments. I'll talk about the big picture and my colleague Anna will drill it down to the industry and what it means for you. So we'll go to those different sections quite quickly. We'll try not to get into all the details. We're here during the 2 days. We have a booth. So the idea is just to give you, that's still Monday morning, so we'll not give you everything right now. So come later and talk to us. So just to situate in general why Canada, Poland, and what we have in common. The one thing to remember is that in Canada we have a large Polish diaspora, over 1 million people of Polish origin in Canada. So that's about 3% of our population. So when people are coming to Canada from Poland, the first thing they always find is another Polish person there. So it's easy when you come in Canada to find and to get along people. We have a growing relationship. Polish exports a lot, or Polish exports to Canada are much more larger, about 7 times to what we do to Poland. But just to put that in perspective, we do about $2.2 billion of bilateral trade, so we're natural partners. We already have a very strong presence here in Poland, a number of leading Canadian companies based here, companies like OpenTech, CGI, Renly on the IT side, but also in all sorts of other sectors. We support about 8,000 jobs here in Poland. At the same time, we're very fortunate in Canada. We have a number of Polish investors. Larger ones are Orlen and KGHM, but also, like I mentioned, in 2013, Techland opened a studio in Vancouver. There's a number of sectors that we see that we have a strong relationship, from energy security, the ag sector, ICT, clean tech, and so on and so forth. So this is what we do. We bring people from Canada, we connect them to Poland. That's our job. One exciting development that is coming between Canada and the EU and Canada and Poland is our free trade agreement, referred to as CETA, which is a comprehensive economic trade agreement. This is what the US is negotiating with EU TTIP. We're far ahead of the US. Very often you will hear in the second part of my presentation, I'll refer to our small neighbor to the south, because we're comparing a lot Canada to the US. But what CETA is, it's our finalized and negotiated trade agreement. All the texts, all the chapters, everything is finalized. Most probably will be presented in June to the Commission for ratification in October. 2016 at a summit in Brussels. What is different with CETA is that it touches not just tariffs, but a number of other areas, from goods, non-tariffs, government procurement, services, so on and so forth. Why this is important for SMEs and startups is that it will provide a more conducive business environment between Canada and the EU. It will provide and facilitate mobility of people. I'll come back to that element with one fairly new program we have in Canada called the Startup Visa Program, especially geared for entrepreneurs. So we're getting into ratification for full implementation by 2017. That's the core of what I wanted to talk to you today, is why we think that Canada is one of the best places to make business and to be a business partner. There's a picture of Toronto, very nice place. Everything that I will say from now on, it's not me in my small office trying to find good stats or nice graphs. These are all elements that have been either quoted or given by other organizations, all reputable organizations. I'm just using that to illustrate what we want to say, that Canada is a good partner. Everything is arranged around, I would say, 6 key pillars that we believe that are important to business people, and I'll explain those. The first one is that Canada over the years have shown excellent economic fundamentals. And why it's important, yes, growth is important. We see, for example, growth in the previous decade compared to what is projected, very similar to what we see in some other leading countries like the US and UK. Different sources all saying the same idea, that Canada, for a G7 country, all due respect to 3.5% in Poland growth, but we're still growing close to 2% of our GDP for a G7 country, which is still significant. We have one of the highest long-term growth rate, very low inflation, low interest rates, and what it means at the end of the day is all those elements leads us to have one of the soundest financial system in the world, in the G7. None of our banks have defaulted. All those macro fundamentals allow us to be able to provide capital, to provide funding, to have a environment that is conducive for business at the macro level. Based on those fundamentals, we're able to be very highly competitive. If you have sound macroeconomic fundamentals, it translates into a sound business environment. According to, again, a number of sources like the EU Intelligence Unit, it's not me saying that, Canada has been acclaimed for its superior business climate, again, ranked #1 compared to a number of other countries. Again, Forbes saying the same thing. And examples of that is a number of steps it takes to open or have registered your new company, your new office. Two steps, 1.5 days, and you're ready to go. Compared to a number of days, number of steps in a number of other countries. These are examples of how a business environment can be conducive to companies. One of the key factors when we're comparing Canada to a number of other countries is tax rates. This is a comparison of The tax rates on profits clearly lowest in the G7. If you compare to the US, about 20% point on profit. Tax on corporate business, 26.1% on average in Canada. Again, about 20% points, 13% points, sorry, lower than in the US. These are extremely important because at the end of the day, this is directly affecting your bottom line. Again, a different comparison about the percentage cost advantage relative to the US into a number of sectors. If you look at digital media, Canada has a clear advantage over a number of other countries. Same in other sectors. At the end of the day, Canada is about 46% more cost advantages relative to the US when you compare and using tax competitiveness as an indicator. That's significant advantage that goes to your bottom line. We have strong economic fundamentals. We have a cost competitive environment. That's good, but what is important is the dynamic workforce because at the end of the day, you're into creative industry. What people need is access to talent, and the workforce is there in Canada. One of the best educated talent pool, engineers that are readily available to join companies, and one of the best environment for entrepreneurs to thrive. Again, very similar to the kind of environment that you would see in the US. We have the workforce, we have a cost competitive environment, we have sound macro fundamentals, but it's not enough to be a great partner. In today's world, you need to have a conducive environment for innovation and to support investment. One of the key factors in Canada where people are coming is access to R&D funding, a very generous program where companies get about up to 40–50% in some cases between federal and provincial support to perform R&D, which is often the case into digital media or gaming sector. Again, a number of comparison where Canada would be a solid place to protect your IP, which is always a very important element when you're creating new content. The other factor which is an important element is access to market. Canada will be one of the only countries to have full access to free trade agreement with the EU, but at the same time we have full access to the North American market, so to the US, to Mexico. Mobility of people, mobility of services, mobility of goods. Most of our population in Canada is within a 2-hour band on the border of the US, $20 trillion market, over or close to 500 million people. So that's a significant market, not just Canada, but the North American market. On top of all those elements, and I think it's the last one because it's the most important one, as people are moving or looking into Canada as their destination of choice, more and more it's not just about ease of doing business, it's not just about the macro fundamentals, access to talent, access to market, but it's quality of life. People are looking to be in a place where they can create, they can develop their ideas, and Canada is one of the best places to live. Again, compared to a number of other countries, that's the Better Life Index. very high GDP per capita, but that's the slide that I think is worth just stopping for 1 second. We have 4 out of the 25 best cities in the world. It's just that Krakow is not there yet, but I'm sure it should be in the top few there. But we have 4 cities, and 3 out of those 4 is where the digital media and the key gaming clusters are in Canada: Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto. We have a global reputation that I think speaks for itself. Safe and just society, land of equal opportunity, and I think that has been shown in the last few months again and again. And we have a very rich and diversified society. For entrepreneurs, for people that are developing a global presence, that's extremely important to have access to diversity of culture, diversity of languages, the ability to develop products, games, content that will be readily available in multiple languages. So these are, in a quick nutshell, the key factors that we think are important for you to consider. The last part of what I wanted to say this morning before I'll invite Anna to come here to talk more about the industry itself is a new program that the government has launched recently called the Startup Visa Program. So it's the SUV, not the truck, but a program that allows entrepreneurs to come to Canada and receive the permanent residency. We have often seen people wanted to come and develop their companies in our innovation ecosystem to have access to the North American network and then come back to their country. But to stay in Canada for some time, you need to have that permanent residency. So recognizing that fact, and often very difficult to go through all those steps, government has come up with a streamlined program called the SUV that allows you to access your permanent residency for Canada on the basic fact that we're very terrible, we're government, to assess what is a good company. So if you receive commitment from either an angel investment group or a VC, angel investment of $75,000, a VC group $200,000, Canadian dollars, which is almost nothing, you can have your permanent residency to come to Canada. Not just for one person, up to 5 people from the same team for the same project, and each of those people can bring up to 7 or 6 other people, so a group of 7. So you can imagine that for a VC commitment of $200,000, a team of 5 could bring 7 people each, so 35 people under one commitment. So that's the idea, that we are open and we want to welcome entrepreneurs in Canada. So there's different minimum requirement, like I said, the 75,000 and the 200,000, or accepted into one of our business incubator program. That's where also you can get into that SUV program. There's a list of VCs, angels, and business incubators that are designated under that program. Typical same approach. You pitch to them, they like your idea, they support, and then you can get into that program. There are 2 other criteria besides being accepted by one of those business angels or VCs, is that you need to have a minimum of language skills, French or English, and you need to have some level of education. Nothing like fully university degree or whatsoever, recognizing again the fact that entrepreneurs are not just university grads. And you need to have some financial, what they call settlement funds, $11,000 per person. Again, these are the minimum threshold that I don't think are that high to get into that kind of program. Program was launched a few years ago, and we have seen interest in different places around the world. The first group that got their SUV program was from Ukraine. So like I said, once you're in Canada, you can have access to all those R&D programs to be part of the innovation ecosystem. Some of those programs would offset, for example, labor cost, lowering by almost 50% the cost to get access to, for example, a computer engineer. In summary, that's a shot of Vancouver. There are a number of where we see Canada as a competitive partner, and of course digital media gaming is one of the key ones. There's a number of sources of information out there if you want to know more. I'm here for the next 2 days, but I'm in Warsaw and always happy to connect and to talk to you at any point. Like I said, those 6 factors I think are the key ones to remember when you think about Canada, and Anna will just drill us down a little bit more into the industry and how the gaming industry works in Canada. These are my contact details. If you want a copy of that presentation, feel free to ask, happy to share. Anna?
That they like the video, and we hope you would enjoy it, and we don't show to you just figures and graphs, but also thanks to this video, have a taste of the Canadian digital gaming industry. Dzień dobry Państwu. My name is Hanna Mróz. I also work for the Canadian Embassy in Warsaw, so we do represent the Canadian government. And my presentation will be complementing the presentation of Nicolas, but I will talk a little bit more specific to the digital gaming industry in Canada. So, oops, goes too quick. So what is Canadian digital game industry? I think that to present it to you, the best way would be to show you the flagships of that sector. And I'm sure you all recognize all those big titles, big names, big brands. So Mass Effect by BioWare, located in Edmonton. Assassin's Creed by Black Flag Ubisoft in Montreal office. Batman Arkham City, again Warner Brothers in Montreal. FIFA series by EA Vancouver. Tomb Raider created in Montreal. Canadian digital gaming sector is one of the largest in the world. It's been ranked as the third largest, just after the US and Japan. And if you count per capita based on jobs, this will be the largest one in the world. It houses more than 300 companies, just game development industry, and employs equivalent of over 16,000 full-time employees in the sector. It's a large sector also in terms of the contribution to the Canadian GDP, as it contributes over $2 billion. Within the industry, within the sector, you will find players in all segments, so developers in 3A console games, advanced console games, all kind of platforms, mobile, social media, producers of middleware, providers of services, and also companies that have been dealing with talent development and academic partnership. So a little bit of more of those big brands and names. We've mentioned already Ubisoft, EA, but you have also Microsoft Studios, Zynga, Capcom, Disney Interactive Studios, Autodesk. All those companies have chosen Canada as their location, and many of them have not just one, but several locations across Canada. So what were really the factors that have made those companies pick Canada? As Nicolas has already mentioned, there are three important elements. And those three elements are talents, so people and the educational system that supports those talents, the attractive business environment, and digital gaming or media clusters that are available and growing in Canada. And this is not what we think, although we believe these are those three elements, three important factors for the decision making, but these are also the elements that have been indicated by those companies, by the investors, and throughout my presentation you will find a lot of testimonials by those companies specifying those elements I will be talking about. So let's talk about the first element, the talent, and obviously creativity is one of the aspects of this element. Besides the game development, digital gaming, there are also other sectors like animation, special effects, film, television. So all those sectors live in symbiosis and produce synergies together with the gaming industry. That's why in the ranking on creative economy, within the list of top 25 global cities ranked highest, Canada was able to place 7 cities led by Ottawa. Also, if you take into consideration the ranking or the top 10 North American cities for a new foreign investment in creative industries, the 3 cities that Nicolas has also mentioned, the hubs for the digital media industry, so Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, are within those top 10s. And as I said, all those industries, subsectors create synergies, live together. There are a lot of events in Canada that you have the logos here presented that also create this creative environment. So Banff World Media Festival, Montreal International Gaming Summit that is taking place every November, Toronto International Film Festival, International Animation Festival in Ottawa, or the event in Vancouver on computer graphics and interactive technologies. Another aspect of talent is obviously people and their education, their skills. In general, Canada has, among the OECD countries, the highest percentage of people with college or university education. And especially in ICT sector, 75% of a workforce has the complete graduate degree, which obviously is very encouraging in terms of acquiring and feeding the industry with skilled workforce. What is also important is the reliability of this workforce in terms of stability. Again, the statistics show that almost 50% of ICT workers remain in their position for 5 years, which we all know that the fluctuation is quite a challenge for the digital gaming industry. Another factor or the aspect related to talent is, as I said, educational institutions that help educate those talents and support them. Across Canada, there is a lot of programs, and they begin already in the college and then are continued at the university degree. So those institutions offer various programs and training related to digital media industry and supporting developing proper skills. Sheridan College was the pioneer in Canada, the college in Toronto. They have offered the first animation course as early as 1968. So for that long, Canada has been offering various training and trainings and programs to educate works for animation, special effects, and digital gaming. And you have here a list of some institutions, as you can see, in all those hubs. So Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, and Canada, and Ottawa. You have both colleges and universities to offer such programs. As Nicolas already mentioned, obviously talents are important also from the point of view of the diversity of those talents that are available in Canada. Canada is known as the icon for diversity, and also here you may see that for those important digital media hubs, so cities like Ottawa, Montreal, Vancouver, and Toronto, you have considerable proportion or percentage of their population and obviously therefore also workforce born outside Canada. So for Ottawa and Montreal, you will have about 20% of the population and workforce. Then Calgary, Vancouver, up to 40%, and Toronto, like almost 50% of its workforce was born outside Canada. which translate into diversity they bring, diversity in their culture, in their heritage, that they bring to the employer, diversity in their mindset, views, ideas. So all the elements that are very, very important for the creative industries. There are about over 200 languages spoken in Canada. This element is also important that those people coming or being born outside Canada, they bring very important understanding and the relation to their countries, to their regions, so they can serve then as the interface with those regions, with those countries, not only in a creative part of the work, but also for the companies in sales or marketing. Another element that also Nicolas has already covered is the mobility of the workforce, and here on the slide you have the NAFTA agreement, which is North American Free Trade Agreement covering 3 countries, Mexico, US and Canada, but obviously with the CETA agreement, so the agreement between Canada and the EU, Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement that Nicolas mentioned, when it comes in force, will provide similar provisions that will facilitate intra-company transfers for employees, but also will provide some provisions for that would facilitate employment of foreigners when the talents, proper talents, cannot be found in Canada. Another big factor that we've already mentioned that make so many companies from North America, from the US, from Asia and Europe to choose Canada as the location for their expansion is obviously very attractive business environment. And this is both from the point of view of attractive tax scheme and lower operating costs, and also tax credits. So as you can again see, it's not our statistics, it's KPMG, competitive alternative reports. Canada ranks very, very high in terms of the tax competitive country for digital media. And this is more specific to digital media tax credits. As you can see, all the provinces in Canada offer their own incentives in a form of digital media tax credits. Obviously, each province may have different scheme, different elements of this program, or different ceilings. But you can get from about 20 to up to 40–50% of the qualified labor cost in form of tax credit. In general, Canadian government supports R&D across the sector, so all companies undertaking R&D are eligible to tax credits. And on the federal level by the Canadian government is about 15%. So then when we combine this with programs provided by each of the province, you may get the combined credit rate for about 20 to almost to above 30%, like in Manitoba. Lower operating costs. Here you can see how well the Canadian main cities, those where the digital media are very vivid and present, compared to 4 US cities, usually those that are being chosen by the industry for their consideration. So for a video game design center, this is the example, and you may not see it from the distance, but in green you have labor costs, and on top of that in red property costs. So again, all 5 Canadian cities provide much more attractive operating costs. And here the same comparison, but also in relation to not only the US, but also some European countries and Asian countries. The last 2 are Australia and Japan. So again, Canada ranks very attractive. And very important element for the employer, for the company, is the labor cost. Here we have two examples. On the left side, the cost of the video game designer, and on the right side, the programmer. Again, comparison between the 5 cities in Canada and the 4 in the US. The two important elements that compose the salary, it's in the light blue, it's a basic salary, and on top darker blue, the additional benefit package. And both in terms of the basic salary, which is lower in Canada than in the US, also those statutory benefit packages are more attractive from the employer point of view, as they are lower in Canada than the US. Also, we have included in that the public healthcare system, which is also less expensive in Canada than in the US. And what is also important, not only for the employer, but also from the employee, for the employee is cost of living and quality of living. And again, as the baseline, we have chosen the New York City as the 100. So you can see that the cost of living is considerably lower in Canada than in the New York City, while the quality of living is much higher. Maybe with the exception of Montreal. I cannot explain why in Montreal, but in general, the index of quality of living is higher than in the New York. So the last element of my presentation is where both the talent and the skills and the business meet. So it's the digital media clusters in Canada. Obviously, you can find the digital media companies across whole Canada, those over 300 companies. But the main parts of the country where they are located is the east of the country and the west province. So let me present each of them. The youngest one, and we begin with the youngest one in Nova Scotia, the Atlantic province of Canada, with the Halifax as the capital. This province houses about 20 studios, and they have been dealing with everything from console games to flash and 3D casual games. You will find there such companies as Ubisoft, HB Studios, Xona Games, and Red Space. Obviously, the province supports the cluster with educational institutions, colleges, universities, and the province offers digital media tax credit up to 50% of eligible labor cost, or up to 25% of total expenditure, whichever is lower, for the province, and some additional regional credits. The largest digital media or digital gaming cluster in Canada, it's located in Quebec, two main cities, Montreal and the Quebec City. It is the largest in Canada, houses almost 100 companies, and gives employment to equivalent of almost 9,000 full-time employees. What's interesting in terms of characteristic of the Quebec cluster is that almost 30% of the companies are foreign-owned. And again, you will find here big names like Ubisoft, Gameloft, Binox, Firma Studio, Warner Brothers, Eidos, Ludia. And again, obviously the province supports the sector with a range of educational institutions on college and university levels, and offers attractive multimedia tax credit of up to 30% of eligible labor cost, plus an interesting characteristic for this province, French-speaking province, 7.5% of bonus for French titles. And another big cluster is located in Ontario, with Toronto as the main center of the cluster, but also some other cities built part of the cluster, so London, Ottawa, and Waterloo. Again, it's about 100 companies located there, and the employment of almost 2,000 people. You can see here again big names, including EA, Rockstar Games, Ubisoft again, as this company has several locations in Canada, Zynga, Digital Extremes, Big Viking Games, and Big Blue Bubble. Again, you have a wide range of colleges and universities that offer digital media programs and trainings, and the media tax credits up to 40% of eligible labor cost, and the max of 100,000 in marketing and other expenditures. So very attractive scheme. And the last cluster is British Columbia, on the very west of Canada. A lot of companies, almost 70 studios, over 5,000 full-time employees, so equivalent of 5,000 full-time employees. Big names in this cluster is Electronic Arts. This is where Electronic Arts started over 20 years ago in Canada. Nintendo, Vivendi, Disney, Capcom, Microsoft Studios, Namco Bandai. Educational institutions include Art Institute of Vancouver, Vancouver Film School, and Center for Digital Media. This province is particular strong also in film making industry and animation special effects. The digital media tax credit offers 17.5% of qualified labor expenditure. So this is in a nutshell what we wanted to tell you about Canada and its digital media sector. We hope those messages will make you think Canada, if not immediately, then in medium or longer term. And as Nicolas said, we're here if you have questions, if you would like to know more, ask more. We're here for the 2 days. We have a booth in Expo Hall vis-a-vis the entrance, so easy to find. And obviously we are available to answer any of your questions, to provide more information all year long, as we are located at the Canadian Embassy in Warsaw. Thank you very much.